Following him is Chauncey. He said, I need to come after Aaron, so Chauncey, you come up from the ACLU because I think he continues where Aaron left off.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Chauncey Smith. I'm a racial justice advocate with the ACLU of California Center for Advocacy and Policy. I'm here today to speak about some of the solutions to a lot of the issues that have been addressed today, specifically ways to hold law enforcement accountable for the injustices that we see playing out on an everyday basis and these lived experiences of profiling and uses of force throughout the nation and here in our home state. The ACLU is currently advocating for two principal reforms or ways to resolve these very troubling issues throughout the nation and here in our home state. One is a new application that we created called Mobile Justice California, and the second is a legislative reform that we currently have pending in Sacramento called the Racial and Identity Profiling Act of 2015, authored by Assemblymember Shirley Weber out of San Diego. I'd like to start off by showing two short clips on the Mobile Justice app so you guys can all get a better understanding of how it functions. One more.
Walking down the street isn't a crime. Protesting peacefully isn't a crime. And certainly hanging out with your friends on the sidewalk isn't a crime. So if you or someone around you becomes a police suspect for doing any of those things, you've got the Mobile Justice app. Mobile Justice makes it easy to record and report interactions with the police. The app has three main functions: record, witness, and report. Tap record to film an incident. Stop recording by tapping the camera icon, and your video will automatically be sent to the ACLU. The test button lets you see if your camera is working without actually sending a video to the ACLU. Once a recording is stopped, the report screen appears. Include as many details as you can, like names, location, and what happened. Click Submit at the end of the report. You can skip the survey by tapping Cancel, but the extra information helps the ACLU learn more about your video. Witness shows mobile justice users where a police stop is taking place. To use this feature, tap My Settings and turn on Broadcast My Location. Then tap the Witness button to activate. The green light means it's on. Once activated, if someone is using mobile justice in your area, you'll get a message with the location of the police stop. Report is the third function. It's a direct link to the incident report so you can report an interaction with the police without recording a video. Just press the Submit button, and the form will be sent to your local ACLU. All recordings and reports are sent anonymously, but you do have the option to include your name, number, and email in My Settings in case your local ACLU office has any follow-up questions. Don't let someone violate your rights because you weren't informed. Go to Your Rights and find out what to do when you're stopped on the street, in your car, or while using this app to film police officers doing their job. You have rights. Know what they are. Know how to protect them, for you and for those around you.
So with that being said, I'd like everyone right now to pull out your phone and download the Mobile Justice app in your app store right now or sometime later today. It's a great feature, and Californians throughout the state are using it to hold law enforcement accountable for the actions. We've seen the incidents in Ferguson, and we've seen the power of video footage such as the Eric Garner incident in New York, Sandra Bland, so on and so forth. And we see that the impact that video footage can have. All too often we have these lived experiences of profiling and uses of force as people of color. However, without the video footage, and going back to Rodney King, without the video footage, a lot of times these incidents get swept under the rug. So the ACLU of California believes that this is a key tool that everyone can engage in to hold law enforcement accountable going forward. Second, I'd like to briefly discuss the Racial Identity Profiling Act of 2015. As I mentioned earlier, it's currently in the California State Senate and is being considered by the legislature. So the Racial Identity Profiling Act is probably the most important law enforcement legislative reform that is currently being considered by the legislature here in California this year. Just as a matter of background, there's been over 24 police reform bills introduced in the legislature this year, and due to the overwhelming influence of law enforcement lobbies, only a small handful are still alive. And this is the key principal reform that the ACLU is advocating for the passage of this year. A recent poll was conducted of California likely voters, and it found that 2/3 of Californians believes that blacks are more likely to be discriminated against by the police. And it found that 71% of Californians believe that young black males are the most likely group to be discriminated by police. So the Racial Identity Profiling Act seeks to address that specific issue, discrimination by law enforcement, specifically within the context of those first interactions before the use of force occurs, which is known by many as racial or identity profiling. AB 953 is the actual number of the bill. It has a few main components. One, it would modernize California's definition of profiling. The current definition of profiling was passed around 2000, and it defines profiling as detaining a suspect based on a broad set of criteria which casts suspicion on an entire class of people. Can anyone tell me what that means? Exactly. It makes no sense. In 2002, the Legislative Analyst Office, which is the entity responsible for reviewing legislation after it's been implemented, conducted a review of California's current definition of profiling and prohibition against it, and concluded that it was over vague, and that because of its over vagueness, law enforcement agencies throughout the state have resisted following it. So AB 953 seeks to rectify that policy issue by specifying the specific identity characteristics that should not be a basis for stopping someone or subjecting them to a search or seizure. And it takes up the recommendations of the Presidential Task Force on 21st Century Policing by expanding the understanding of profiling beyond race to include other identity characteristics, hence the name of the bill. So it prohibits stopping a person or searching him or subjecting them to a property seizure, not only based on race, but also sexual orientation, religion, national origin, so on and so forth. Second, a key component of the bill is collecting data on law enforcement community interactions. And the idea behind that is we have numerous narratives and lived experiences of profiling that we hear about all the time, such as Aaron's story. My own story, I've been profiled. I grew up in the same neighborhood as him, and I'm sure any other black male that lives into their 20s is going to have some type of experience with the police that is somewhat negative. So AB 953 would collect data on all law enforcement stops, and so we can get a better understanding of how those interactions take place on an everyday basis and get a more systematic understanding of the issue. A third major component, it would enhance law enforcement training, so that accounts for modern social science and teaches law enforcement personnel about fair and impartial policing, and specifically modern notions of racism. I think the typical understanding of racism is fairly outdated, although it does still exist, but it fails to account for unconscious biases, because social science research tells us that even with the best intentions at heart, because we are human beings, we still have biases, and it can affect the way we do things on an everyday basis. So that's the third component. And fourth, it would create an advisory board, which is composed of community voices, law enforcement, policing experts, clergy, a wide variety of stakeholders. And the idea behind the advisory board is to have everybody have a seat at the table, look at the data, look at law enforcement policies and practices throughout the state, and to develop solutions and recommendations for moving forward to prevent these harms that we see taking place on an everyday basis. So with that being said, I would encourage everyone in this room to do whatever you can to help with the passage of AB 953 so we can start to get some law enforcement reforms that address these issues that have been discussed today, and also download Mobile Justice California. Thank you.